Welcome back to Daily Wire Plus.
I don't think I ever talked about my experience trying to cancel Daily Wire Plus.
Why would you want to cancel
But
Daily Wire
it was
Plus? Think about all the...
I didn't feel I was getting my return on investment for my BentKey subscription. The new season of Chip Chilla was taking just far too long for my liking.
Okay, you ever hear about the parable of the cave from Plato's Republic? You're
Sure,
stuck in
yeah.
the cave. Daily Wire Plus is the light. It's reality. And you must stay in your woke-ass cave looking at the shadows on the wall.
I do want to stay in I don't want to look at Matt Walsh's shadow. I don't want to look at Jeremy Boring's. I think it is funny, though, how they, like, when they announced BentKey, they really had this air of, like, yeah, we're taking on the entertainment industry. We're taking over. And BentKey was their, I feel like, no. BentKey was their children's entertainment streaming service. It was their answer to we're going up against Disney, and they had the fucking Snow White and the Evil Queen, the Brett Cooper vehicle that I believe is just quietly canceled, which is very funny because of how big of a deal like Jeremy Boring made about its announcement, and because they were making a non-woke Snow White.
A non-woke story about the monarchy and chivalry, known for being woke.
Well, and it was because the set photos of Disney Snow White came out, and it was a bunch of, it was like it wasn't even the dwarves, but there was like a black character and a fat character, and so
really woke,
they were they made the dwarves woke.
If it was really woke, the 7 dwarves would get Snow White, chop her head off, and start parading around town with a pike.
Death to Snow White, death to the petty bourgeois.
She's not petty bourgeois. This is a bourgeois.
Well, she's not.
Revolution.
She's not.
Yeah, this
she
would
was
be a liberal revolution. The 7 dwarves, they represent the emerging French bourgeoisie during.
They represent our heroes in Congress: Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, all the people defending right now against. Rosa, right now, these people are defending us against Drumpf and the muskrat.
Dude,
and they are.
Whenever I think of Hakeem Jeffries, I think of that lib YouTuber Hakeem that makes videos on why the Tiananmen Square massacre didn't happen, because it didn't happen in Tiananmen Square. It happened like 2 miles away. They're not that different ideologically, but it's just a funny image in my mind. The fuck ass profile picture of Lenin in Congress.
Oh God, if only. Well, speaking of Congress, the news today is kind of just focused on yesterday, which for those, as of recording, this is going to be out in a while after, but I think talking about Trump's address to Congress last night, and also the March 4th protests that happened around the nation is a really good way to probably kick off a discussion of how we got here and what to do as far as organizing going forward. And I bring that up because I went to, for yesterday, and for those who don't know, I am Jordan, also known as Dead Domain of the YouTube channel Dead Domain, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rosa, of the Composting Podcast.
And producer of Library of the Communist Left from the Solar Collective, where you can listen to audiobooks for free.
Hell yeah.
By the time that this is out. If not, that's edited out.
The magic of editing saves us all.
Yes, it's true.
And yesterday I went to, and the reason I bring up the YouTube channel is that there will be a video about this, because there were some fascinating insights.
I mean, this is on your YouTube channel, so.
Oh yes, this will be. All right, edit that out.
No, it's funny.
there are some fascinating insights into the kind of modern liberal mind right now that I gleaned from the protest. Because there was a March 4th protest. I saw it kind of advertised nebulously on Instagram, Facebook. People sent it to me. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I will show out for a protest, do something. I've been trying to connect with a couple local people lately. I'm going to be going to more PSL events around here, which is the local Party for Socialism and Liberation, and that is in Spokane. That is like literally the only kind of leftist organizing we have.
Dude,
it's true.
Don't they like fuck? Oh.
That's all we got. But in my defense, I think that there are differences between different branches and different like groups within cities. So the PSL here is going to be different than the one in New York.
Yeah, my PSL, I asked them, does commodity production occur under socialism? And they say yes. Can you achieve socialism in one country? They say yes. And then I asked them their positions on Pol Pot. They said, we'll come back to you. And then I asked them their positions on the Gonzalite revolt in Peru, and they said, we'll have to come back to you. It's just a mess of college students and like weirdo fucking 80-year-old Maoists.
I can probably speak to there being a couple college students there, but the reason that I want to start attending their events and getting more active is that they are literally, like I said, they are the only broadly leftist group working here in what is predominantly, where I live in Spokane, predominantly a pretty red city and red area. Like, we are known as the red part of Washington State.
Yeah, you're the Nazi area.
Basically. And
I get that as like self-defense.
Well, and it's also, they are the only progressive or leftist group looking to get into local electoral politics. Like, actively looking to get people elected to school boards, to town hall spots, to like actually get engaged with the community, which is a good thing because, like I said, we skew pretty hard red, generally speaking, when it comes to social policy here in Spokane. But all of that is to say that I went to this protest, which was not, by the way, was not organized by then. I've just been trying to get more active at events. And it was a pretty meager turnout, which, again, not surprising. There were probably, maybe about 200 or so people there. A lot of people brought signs. A lot of people, there was somebody who was nice enough to bring like a huge thing of Starbucks coffee that was fresh and hot, and he handed out to people for free. And like, the vibe was pretty good, but it was also very fractured between what you were talking about, where there were a lot of like older people who seemed very hippie-ish. Like, they seemed very like liberal, maybe more radical when they were younger, and then younger, more radical people. And I say more radical people because there were an assortment of young people who looked maybe young college, maybe high school age, who were there with the Palestine flag that they were waving.
Yeah.
I only saw 2 people with representation for Palestine. Meanwhile, there were a shit ton of kind of middle-aged white libs with like Ukraine supporting signs.
The primary issue with quote-unquote leftist organizing in this country is that these organizations are stuck in the case of the DSA, in like a weird 2016 electoral era, or in the 1960s boomer new left Stalinism era. Like,
so the problem with this particular rally is that there wasn't really any organization behind it. Like, it was just kind of like we got there and everybody just kind of started gathering because people went, are you here for the thing? Yeah, we're here for the thing. But there was nobody who actually organized a march. There was nobody who actually, like, it was just this weird look at like people who wanted to be active in their community.
Yeah.
But had really no direction aside from like an Instagram post or a Facebook post.
And that's the big issue, that we have no principled organizations in this country. They're all obsessed with the principles of entryism, often with a nationalistic bent, and we're very separated from Europe in this regard, in the sense that we haven't modernized in response to the Trump administration. I mean, you see the DSA for the past, 3 years has been discussing breaking with the Democratic Party without any action, just having that discussion. The PSL's issues are so numerous that they're not even worth listing. And you see with like what are the other options, like the ACP? Like it's a bleak condition, which is why my position when it comes to like how to get organized, that first things first, most organization, you're not going to be achieving socialist aims within these organizations. The biggest thing is about making sure that members of the Latin community and queer communities particularly are safe and have access to safe houses if need be. I think that the most important thing is putting together safe house initiatives, obviously underground and likely extra legally, for the sake of minimizing harm. I feel like alongside that, there should be an active effort made to push these organizations in a more modern direction, given the rapid progression of history in the United States and across the globe.
Well, and so that actually brings me to talking about a more progressive direction. That brings me to something, the most interesting happenstance at this protest, which was there was somebody there who looks like a college-age dude, looked like the most regular, not in a weird way, just like the most regular white dude you would pass on a street. Mm-hmm. Like not in a incel way, not in a like asshole Joe Rogan listener kind of way, just like a regular dude, completely like not unremarkable, just like moderately good looking, moderately tall, nondescript in a lot of ways.
Fucked him.
No, he was there with his girlfriend, but he had a sign that was immediately notable because it was just a printout of Elon Musk's head with red tassel streamers at the bottom of it and his eyes X'd out. So it was just Elon Musk's decapitated head with like dripping blood. The streamer effect was actually very well done. He got a lot of compliments on it. But the most interesting part is that him being I ended up interviewing him again. That'll be on the channel. Mm-hmm. The most interesting part was that he took it upon himself to kind of give a impromptu speech to everybody there, saying that it doesn't seem like anybody here is really organizing this. It doesn't seem like anybody here is really in charge or gonna speak. So I'm going to. And basically what he said is that people have to remember moving forward that the reason you're out here, you need to keep that fire going, and keep in mind that legality is not a guide to morality.
Yeah.
And one of the other things he said, so here's the interesting part. One of the things he said, because everybody was listening at this point to this, one guy yelling a lot of stuff we were all agreeing with. But the thing that to him was divisive, and I kind of want to use this to springboard, or to other people was divisive, and I kind of want to use this to springboard into talking about the Democrat Party and Trump, was that he started talking about how there may come a time in the near future where you may have to lay down your life for what you believe in. You may have to lay down your life, sacrifice your material possessions, go to jail, face physical harm for what you believe in, for your fellow person, which is true. Like that is.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But there was somebody there and I talked to him too. He was an older gentleman, not like very much older, like, middle aged, who was kind of trying to say like, hey man, this sounds like you're trying to incite violence, and that kind of derailed the conversation. But I think it was such an interesting look watching people react to what he was saying at the beginning and how rapt they were with, we need to fight, we need to, overthrow, Trump and deport Musk and all this stuff. And then the second it came around to, no, this is like, there is a very real chance that this could evolve into something more threatening, more violent. Yeah. And you have to be ready for that. A lot of people backed away, like notably.
Yeah, I think that this is a very good, like, small-scale allegory for the state of the semi-communistic movement within the United States, because you have this class consciousness on the part of many younger people who are lone actors without any organizations that really cater towards them. Rather, like I said, just remnants of Bernie Sanders era social democracy and remnants of 1960s New Left Stalinism, where these people end up attending events looking for people that agree with them. Often they find people that agree with them, but the moment that any sort of suggestion is made for action to take place, people back down, because in many cases the working class of America has more to lose than their chains. We have a we benefit greatly from the position of the United States relative to other nations in the world, which I believe is the cause for the fact that our working class movements, alongside the actions of the CIA and FBI, I think that that's why so many of our working class movements are so defanged and wrapped up in liberal ideology.
Well, and I think that...
I do want to make an additional note very quick.
Oh yeah, go for it.
If anyone is telling you that you should lay down your life for the quote-unquote real movement and inciting you to terrorism, terrorism is not effective. It has never been effective. It is a tool of reaction, and it aids the state, leads to popular support of the state, and often purges of your fellow leftists, and is often a tool of the FBI to entrap people into committing illegal acts. I would check out the podcast Alphabet Boys if you'd like to learn about how that tactic was used during the Black Lives Matter movement. So be suspicious when you see more terroristic radicalism on the part of left-wingers at protests and things like that. I'm not accusing that.
Oh yeah. I want to be clear. I don't think that's what he was saying. He was not. I've been to protests where people are like, yeah, let's flip this van over. Like, I've been to protests where people are actually trying to incite and start shit.
Yes.
And I think it was more a matter of he was getting kind of swept up in the grain, which like that fucking happens to people. Like if you are not used to public speaking, if you're suddenly put on a spot, like that, words fucking slip out. It's not an easy thing to do.
I think it's true that it is a that I don't know. I think it's in my interest as a working class person to do whatever necessary to see the creation of working class control across the global economy. So there is a grain of truth to that, even if it might be marginally.
Well, and I think
but rhetorically,
that
is effective and a powerful invocation.
Well, and I think it goes hand in hand even with what you were saying about like any progressive or any tangible leftist movement needs to focus on community outreach, on safe houses, on having these backup plans. And like the reason like that violence can still come into play in those events. Like the ideas that he was really pressing about legality not being a guide for morality, especially as we're talking about, well, we'll talk about the Congress address here, but especially as we're talking about things like defining and legislating against immigrants, against people who aren't even immigrants, are just not white, against people who are queer and LGBTQ. As this stuff increases, you're going to see more examples of violence. And I think the idea of, you know, being able to, it's not just the idea of, you know, I think a lot of people like to jump to saying like, oh, this sounds like incitement. But I think it also needs to be an example of like, you need to not just stand by idly if something is happening. You need to take action in your community. And if you need to be a bulwark against violence, you need to be ready to do that, which is the idea that I think he was getting at.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that. I think that, yeah, a lot of that, the negative reactions towards that sort of represents my belief that this idea of leftism, this broad notion of leftism, which encompasses everything from progressives who will support disastrous abuses across the globe, but like to protect their civil rights for themselves personally. Petite bourgeois elements of the Democrat Party, all the way to anarchists and Stalinists and left communists, etc., etc., etc. I think it's sort of a golden calf where what we need to do is focus on an actual working class movement in this country, rather than if we want to solve the problem at source. I think that this idea of leftism is effective when it comes to things like the whole safe houses thing, where you're operating within a liberal framework and not really challenging capitalism in any way. But if you want to get the shit done, there needs to be a break from leftism, because you see a complete difference in the consciousness of the working class movement to change the current state of things, and the for lack of a better term, treat-the-right Democrat faction.
The established political Democrat class.
Yes, yeah. And I think that the biggest issue with so many organizations is the fact that there's this commitment to big tent leftism. In the PSL, there's a commitment to allowing MLs and Maoists among their ranks, among the proletarian party, despite the fact that these ideologies only achieved liberal capitalism within their nations. You see within the DSA a commitment to, for lack of a better term, stupid nonsense, stupid liberal nonsense, which gets in the way of any sort of potential for that to turn into a working class movement. I think that there needs to be a break. There needs to be a real movement. It can't be compromised and held back by these remnants of failures past. There needs to be something new. There needs to be something that young people want. Because everybody that you see in these organizations is compromising. They say to themselves, I'm compromising. They say to themselves, there's no better option. They say to themselves, that's all that there is. That's all that I have, etc., etc., etc. You can start something new. You can start something better. We can do something better together. We can do something bigger than ourselves if we give up on this sort of cuckolding.
See, I think I have to push back on that, because
Sure.
I think the problem that I see with these leftists, vaguely leftists, because I think you are right with there is a problem. Somebody put it succinctly. when they were talking about, I don't remember where it was, but I was seeing people talk about how over time, Bernie, over time, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, a lot of these, the squad, the progressive hopefuls from a couple years ago, how they have been molded and kind of grafted on to the system that they, everybody kind of hoped that they would be spur on some great change. And it hasn't really happened. The most we get is appreciated, but it is very little. It does nothing. And somebody observed that the problem with American politics is that you don't change the system changes you. And I think that within these progressive movements, that mindset is still present. I think you are right, there is a problem with this kind of big tent progressivism, where people want to have, they look at what it really is. They want to have the kind of broad appeal, and I think so many leftists, I think so many progressives wish they had the lack of standards that conservatives do. Because you see conservatives, and you see, it doesn't matter if somebody is like Andrew Tate. It doesn't matter if somebody is like Joe Rogan. It doesn't matter if somebody says, "Oh, well, I'm pro-vaccine and I'm pro-gay, but I like Trump." They say, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Like, see, we got this guy who's pro-vaccine and pro-gay." And I think the problem with the idea of a big tent leftist movement is, I think we do in a way to combat right-wing rhetoric, we do need that kind of fighting fire with fire. But the problem is how do you balance that with education? How do you balance that with community outreach? How do you balance that political structure with still trying to push things further and further to a properly leftist framework, and not just this stultifying corporate pride, fucking lobbyist-backed slop that is dripping out of the Democrat Party and has been for the last, 20, 30, 40 years.
I think that in my view, the first step from that is a break from this idea of leftism as a whole. Rather, I say that. When I say that, I mean going to the left of leftism, in rejection of the reactionary elements of leftism. But in the meantime, I understand the appeal of that sort of big tent thing when it comes to just keeping people safe. But if people want more, there does need to be that break. If we want to attack the cancer that is Trumpism at the source, it has to be an attack on liberalism, because liberalism is the first stage of the terminal illness that is the ideologies of like Nick Land and Trump.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think, and we can see that again. This might be the perfect jumping point into talking about the address, because I'm staring at it. I've had this pulled up for a couple minutes. On CNN, a protest in pink. Democrats respond to Trump's speech through clothes. And I'm looking at a bunch of Capitol Hill Democrats, all in pink and white, and a sign one of them is holding that says, "Trump betrays women for billionaire tax cuts." And if you saw, I'm sure you saw, plenty of people did last night, at the address, there were a number of people who were holding up signs as Trump came out. One of said, "This is not normal," and kind of went pseudo-viral. People were talking about it. But I want to say the only person that I actually can give any amount of credit to for standing up, quote unquote, standing up to Trump, was, Al Green, who was removed from the chamber, who did not sit back down, who continued railing, went outside, talked to reporters, said, "I don't support this. I don't support this. What he's doing to Medicare, Social Security, all this stuff is wrong. He's wrong about this." Yeah. That is...
He stayed standing and got thrown out, to clarify.
And as a 77-year-old man, person of color, to do that, that is actually standing up. Meanwhile, what the rest of the Democrats did, their version of Act activism, their version of, oh, we're gonna show Trump, was to, and they, the C-SPAN feed cut wide a lot of the times, and you could see literally the chamber was divided between people who would stand up and give raucous applause every time Trump, brought out a new baby to say like, oh, look, we made this baby a deputy astronaut or whatever the fuck. And then the Democrat side was just a bunch of people.
It was the mentally disabled person that got hit in the head with a volleyball.
Oh my god!
From a trans woman.
Oh, we might have to cut this out, but when they cut to her, I was like, oh, she was playing volleyball, or she okay. I thought. Yeah, that's no. We had the same joke, but we gotta cut that. It's so fucking mean.
No, fuck her, dude. Whatever.
No, it's I can't get on board with even that joke. I like, yes, fuck her, because she is like a opportunistic piece of shit who I'm sure has ruined the life of her opponent, because like, look, it's an accident that fucking happens in volleyball. But yeah, when you looked at the other side of the chambers, it was just Democrats stoically not saying anything. And how much more powerful of an example, if literally every Democrat followed Al Green's example, you know what?
Minimum.
It's the bare minimum that we should expect, but instead, they were fucking punching bags for Trump all night.
It's something
he literally pointed at them. He literally called Elizabeth Warren, said, Pocahontas doesn't think that's funny. As he's making jokes about them, they were fucking props for his political theater, and they just sat there and took it, and it's so fucking unnerving.
They're sitting there watching their country get raped to death, for lack of a better term. Like, it's ridiculous.
It is. It's so frustrating to be contemplating. And meanwhile, we're seeing what was the country that came out.
I just before you move on, I just want to say, in response to the "this isn't normal" sign, fuck you. What is normal to these people? A second Shoah happening in Gaza? Like single mothers starving on the streets? What the fuck is normal? What the highest homelessness rates in the richest country the world has ever known, with enough wealth to make the goddamn pharaohs blush? Is that normal? Do we want a return to normal? Does running on we want to go back to normal, does that work? No, it doesn't work.
Well, and it's the normal that to them, it's the same fucking thing.
Because normal to them is getting their little fucking APAC checks, renting out their Airbnbs, teeing off with their buddies in the weekend, getting money from the Saudis, getting money from Israel, getting money.
It's the same. It's the same brand bidder of upper middle class white like brunch liberalism that we saw immediately be like, oh my god, as soon as Biden came into office, they're like, oh, isn't it so nice? We don't have to worry about Trump. We don't have to hear about the Cheeto all the time. And it's like, okay, but then what? That was the extent of their political activism. They just didn't like the aesthetics of Trump, of the Republicans.
If there's nobody watching and you were overdosing on the street and your local Democrat politician walked by, he would likely urinate on you just because of how much he fucking hates the average working class person. Mm-hmm. They disdain the working class of this country, and you see that within their shift in strategy at the latest conference. You saw that reporting.
Oh God, yeah.
Where they want to
chalk up patriotism. Yeah.
Yeah. They want to appeal to like the small business owners class. Essentially.
No, it's literally a party of petty bourgeois. Like they which I was just talking to my girlfriend about this the other day about Trump's faux populism. Is that like Trump is not as much as, Alex Jones and fucking Steve Bannon and all of his dumbass propaganda lackeys want to be like, oh, well, Trump's a populist. He's for the working man. He's not. He isn't. However, Trump and his team, the people he surrounds himself with, at least understand branding. And they
No.
understand the idea of how to make it sound like they're pro-populist. They understand that there is a undercurrent in America of people who are in a struggling class, who have been working incredibly hard for less and less, who know something is wrong with their leadership, and Trump was the only one trying to appeal to those people. Meanwhile, the Democrats were doing fuck all.
He did so little.
It was so. That's the fucking thing. It's so fucking easy.
At least Mussolini ran on fucking unions and welfare. He's not even left wing enough for me to call him a fucking fascist. Do you know how bad you have to be do you know how bad the Democrats have to be to where a guy can run on nothing, and be the working class candidate?
And meanwhile, you have the Democrats. And granted, I don't.
Mussolini fucking lied. At least he lied. Trump doesn't even have the gall to lie about any sort of meaningful working class policy. He just spouts
not at all
bullshit.
It's just oh, you're gonna be so rich, and people you have these just masses and masses of people in this country, and you hear it, on the campaign trail. You heard it all the fucking time of people being like, well, the Democrats, they've gerrymandered this district, and then a factory shut down, and we lost our jobs here. And there are so many people, there were tons of profiles that came out about this person voted for Biden, but here's why they're changing. And it always comes down to their economic situation. It is always the people who, I can't afford to put my kid through college. I'm drowning in student debt. I'm doing all of this other shit. And the Dems, their entire message it's that same brunch time aesthetic of look at us. We have Oprah. We have Taylor Swift. We're not that slovenly, boorish oaf Trump. And look at his backwoods hick-ass vice president. We're not like that at all.
Yeah,
and it's how many times do you have to fucking learn? Did they not learn? Rhetorical question, but did they not learn that when Hillary came out and said, oh, the deplorables, and the fucking Republicans have spent the last decade using that as a badge of honor to, again, brand their populism, brand the idea of a populist sentiment, regardless of how genuine it is. It is the branding that they're taking hold of.
Yeah. The best thing that you can be is a threat to the system right now, whatever you want to call the system, whether it be, I don't know, what the Republicans think is a mix of international Jewry and Chinese guys, or whatever, and Canada, I think, whatever the fuck they believe in, or if you're Bordiga pilled, you can say oh, the bourgeoisie or whatever, but this is a failure on the part of the Democrats fully, because in order to be a quote-unquote left-wing populist, you need to challenge capitalism, and therefore, you're not going to win elections. You're not going to get the funding necessary to win elections, which is why the PSL has failed in every regard to win any sort of meaningful local power. The idea of entryism is dead in this country. And the median voter has given up on electoralism. If did not vote was a candidate, it would have won every single election since Gore.
I mean, and I feel like a lot of the time people are too. Yeah, there does. And it's so that was the other undercurrent of the people I spoke to. Like I said, I interviewed a couple people. The video will be out on the channel of being at a protest, because I found it. The reason I started talking to people is that I saw all of these different types of cats showing up. You had these kind of old hippies. You had these, for lack of a better term, I think probably Jon Stewart viewers. They just you get the idea. And then there were a couple cats who showed up all in black bloc, who were, they had signs talking shit about the Democrats and saying that they are not working in our interest. And there were people with...
I think that there's a disconnect, because I think that the average working class dude would find a guy in black bloc scary. I think it's our job to make ourselves shown to be the working class movement.
And so I was just
that disconnect.
I was literally, as I was on my run, I was literally just thinking about this, because there is when you take almost any, and this is something I've learned. This is when I talk about a broad leftist movement, when I talk about a widening tent, part of that needs to include former conservatives, or at least give conservatives a chance to learn. And the thing that people jump down my throat about on Twitter whenever I say stuff like this is that, like, oh, some people just they're so brainwashed, and I'm not talking about them. What I'm talking about is, and granted, a lot of people on Twitter, they haven't gone out and actually talked to these people. They did not go to the Trump inauguration and talk to the diehards and get people to agree with you when you are talking in terms that they understand or have not been pilled against.
And I'll tell you what the problem with those people is because they don't care about the working class. What they want is a book club. What they want is a social space to hang out in. That is, yes, I do enjoy hanging out with some of my colleagues. However, that's not the point. The point is to organize the working class, and guess what? The majority of the working class has some reactionary beliefs as a result of the bourgeois media. And that goes for liberals, too. You think liberals are fucking brainwashed?
Fuck, they absolutely are.
Worse. Because you know what? At least the average conservative knows that there are problems in this country. At least the average conservative knows that there are fucking problems. And it's always these white liberals that say we shouldn't be talking to them when they are the most brainwashed. The least brainwashed people in this country are often people in flyover states, black people, and immigrants who are disenfranchised from the Democrat Party.
People who have been repeatedly, especially in the context of people of color, people who have been repeatedly fucked over for decades. And I was actually, so that was what made me think about it, is I was contemplating the ideas around American education and how we are essentially propagandized. I was thinking, I got off on a tangent talking to somebody about Henry Ford and how in America, we don't talk about things in totality. We talk about these broad strokes, and it's to basically inundate American kids with factoids. And we have Snapple fact history, where you learn about Henry Ford in the context of what he did for automation and manufacturing and how that revolutionized things and made America more profitable, and it helped us and it did all these great things. But what you don't learn is you don't learn that he was a rabid fascist and anti-Semite who proliferated rampant Nazi ideology into America for decades through his actions.
I mean, that's how it's been since Victorian England.
It absolutely has. And I'm not saying that that's like a new thing.
Yeah.
But it is in favor of, like, it is a broad, and this is tying into what we were just talking about, it is a broad indoctrination project of the American capitalist class, of the people. Like, you cannot have these bad things that Walt Disney, that fucking Charles Lindbergh, that, you know, these pillars, they're held up as these scions of American optimism and potential and all this shit. And you cannot have those discussions and teach them to children in a way that will make them see them as anything but that. And the thing that comes back around to is it made me think about, it's not that different. Like when you hear Alex Jones, when you hear conspiracy theorists talk about how, oh, your kids are being indoctrinated to hate America, it's obviously that's not fucking true. Like, CRT is not a tangible problem. All this shit has been blown so far out of proportion for the conservative propaganda mill. But it is, like you were saying, it is that conservatives at a populist level, they are recognizing that something is wrong in that country. That every conservative, most people have the experience when they get older, like, oh, damn, I didn't learn about the CIA doing that. I didn't learn about the government doing that in high school. And they realize, even at just a tiny little fraction, they realize that something is being kept, something is being manipulated, something is being shifted to keep them not knowing it. And I think the difference between mainstream liberalism and conservatism right now is that conservatism will take that inkling, that notion that something is wrong, and they will wrap it in, you know, a fucking 5 layers of bacon and deep fry it and say it's the fault of the Jews, it's the fault of the black people.
Yeah.
Whereas liberalism will pretend it doesn't happen.
I think the best way to view this is that this Trumpism is a worship of the nation, and liberalism in America is a worship of the state. You know, because the fucking liberals, they don't want to acknowledge that there's anything wrong with the state. They'll acknowledge that there are some issues with the nation. The Republicans, they're on the inverse. Neither of them are willing to acknowledge the fact that these aren't two separate ideas. They're one and the same. They're the same thing, and there are problems with both of them, and they need to be smashed. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and I want to go back to actually talking about. I think the best example we can probably give to that is the notes that came out of the Democrat gathering as they're trying to move forward, recoup their losses, and put together a new platform. And their platform is just, again, what fucking Kamala did, just to try and push for more conservatism.
Yeah.
It is the reason why I bring all of this up is not to say that conservatives are right about this stuff, because that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that you can sit down and talk to most conservatives and probably a fair amount of liberals, but you can sit down and talk to most conservatives in terms they'll understand and get them to agree with broad ideas about working class solidarity, about equality, about things that you would not believe, like gender and race and sexuality and all of these things that. And I feel like I hate using the term psyop because I don't like conspiratizing things in that way. But there's so many.
I think it's a fair material analysis to say that the communist movement within the United States has been victim of psyops. That's just
yeah. And again, that goes back to education. That goes back to the things you learn as a kid. Communism, evil, killed millions of people. Capitalism, great. Nobody's died unless it's their own damn fault.
Yeah.
But I say all of that to talk about. God damn it! Sorry, there's people out in the hallway, so my dog's barking.
It's all right. I'll give you a moment.
Shush.
Hopefully, when the crypto money starts coming in, we can afford an office.
I forgot what we were talking about now. We took a break because my dog started barking.
We were just talking about the phony populism of the
the liberals.
Party. And here's the thing: you were talking about how you can get most people on board to in terms of communist sentiments, and this is why I always make the argument that communism is often can be, in my case, it is a selfish ideology rooted in egoism. It's in my own interest to be a communist as a working class person. It's in your interest. It can be as simple as that. That's the basis of Marxism. The basis of Marxism is acting in your own self-interest. It's in the interest of every single working class person to support.
But it is, again, it's been so indoctrinated, and it has been indoctrinated into the American populace that if you are doing anything that benefits somebody else, it doesn't matter if it's in your best interest, it doesn't matter, and we saw this, and it has been such a sickening turn, because I think we're going to see it again as more sicknesses ramp up, as RFK does whatever the hell he's going to do. But you saw this in something like COVID and the masks, where it became, the Republicans quickly turned it into this issue of personal independence. I think you're right about liberals worshiping the state, whereas Republicans, they worship this ideal of American independence.
You see this with the DSA, where they continue this weird politicization of masks, where in the year of our Lord 2025, in my chapter, they require DSA officials to wear masks whenever they're in public. Dude, are you fucking kidding me? It's this insane virtue signaling disconnect where it's an infantile anti-fascism in which whatever the so-called fascists are doing, we must do the opposite.
Well, and that gets to something very interesting that I kind of want to talk about as well. And that's this: there is a broad trend now, that shouldn't be too surprising, of kind of anti-wokeness, where you've seen a lot of streamers. Amaranth went on a fucking diatribe recently. Asmongold has been on a kick about it for over a year now. And you've seen a lot of people coming out and kind of asking questions about, like, okay, is being anti-woke the next cool thing to do? But when you look into it, there was an article that I believe Taylor Lorenz did for Rolling Stone, called the Cruel Kids Club, where she was in DC for the inauguration, and at basically a ritzy influencer party for conservative very fucking bougie, shitty, and it was just like when she interviewed these kids, these teenagers and college kids who were saying why they moved to Trump. The stuff they didn't have, and granted, these are upper crust, upper middle class, probably upper class. Yeah, not even upper middle class. Like they're in suits and exactly. Like they are probably DC politician kids and lobbyist kids, and they come from fucking money. Yeah. But all of their ideas about wokeness and DEI had to do with like being able to say the R slur and being able to do this and being able to, I wanted to make, fat jokes again. And it comes back to these ideas of that I think conservatives have definitely pushed more than anything, but that kind of, like you were saying, that infantile liberal virtue signaling hasn't really helped.
As a comedian, I think that 99% of the tone policing on that quote-unquote leftists do is stupid antisocial bullshit that people only engage in online and when they're in those essentially social spaces, because more often than not, it's not proper political movement. It the R slur thing I get. I get that. That makes sense. There's that history behind it. But when it comes to shit like there's a certain type of joke you can't make, when it's like, dude, I feel like you should be able to make whatever kind of fucking joke that you want as long as it's funny and punching up. Don't punch down. Punch sideways, punch up. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the sort of jester's code, for lack of a better term.
Let me give a really good actual example, because I had this very thing happen to me once. There was, when I was still doing stand-up around here, there was a queer open mic, and it was kind of, it was very much, it started off really great. I will say, it started off with really great intentions. I have not gone in a while, but I usually, because it was on the same night as the kind of big comedy club open mic, and so if I went up, in the first half of the comedy club open mic, which you have to sign up for like a month in advance, and they schedule it out because they don't want people just showing up and sucking. When I did that, I got off stage and I'm like, okay, you know what? I can go get some mic time at the other place, workshop some material. And that way, like when I was really grinding, I was hitting like 3 mics every Tuesday. Yeah. And it's just like all downtown, just based in proximity to each other. And so I went to the queer open mic, and I was workshopping a joke that got some chuckles before, but the joke was basically, it was actually me talking about how I infiltrated the hate church. Because when I used to go on stage, I used to wear makeup and stuff, and I was talking about, hey, I just put out a video where I infiltrated hate church, and the joke was, now you might ask how someone like me, and I'm in makeup, I'm in full feminine clothing, how someone like me got into a far-right hate church. And the answer may surprise you. Khakis. Yeah, it turns out that white people don't even care what you look like if you're wearing a pair of khakis. And the next part of that joke was, that's actually how Tiger Woods got his start. Is he just kind of walked into the country club one day, and a bunch of old guys went, oh, those are nice pants. Hey, wait a minute. And at the comedy club, and, comedy club full of, they're not conservative by any means. All the kind of big heads around here, all the kind of, and when I say big heads, I just mean like the big well-known personalities, have never been anything but nice and welcoming and considerate to me. And they're a bunch of old, not old, but like, they're a bunch of middle-aged white and black dudes. Like they're just normal folks. And like they respected me enough to like ask my pronouns and shit and try and like change the way they talked around me. And I have again nothing but good things to say about a lot of great people in the local comedy scene. Mm-hmm. And they, you know, again, joke got some giggles. I wanted to tweak it a little bit. When I told that joke at the queer open mic, and I had done a little bit of a set before that. It was, you know, you got 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, and I had filled my time. Everything was going good. Whole bar was laughing. There was a group that was the primary queer comedy group, I guess you could say, of like, I want to say 10, 12 people up front, like right in front of the stage. And when I told that joke, they went dead silent. And then very performatively, mostly. Yeah. There were 2 mixed people there. And then very performatively just did not laugh. I tried pulling out some material that usually makes everybody laugh, queer or not. And then I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going off stage. And then when the host came up, they said something to the effect of, yeah, that's what happens when you joke about race, but you shouldn't, or something like that. Whatever, dude. And the joke was, and I had never, like, I was, that really sucked, like being called out in front of a group of people like that, and essentially being called like a racist. When the joke was,
it's not even racist.
No, the joke was that old white men are racist.
Yeah,
like the joke, like
about a divorced dad going to Libya because a slave is cheaper than a Corvette. And my stand-up scene is mostly black folks, and that joke hits every time, like without fail. I don't know. It's just like this.
There's a disconnect. It's exactly what you were talking about, where there's a disconnect between these people, unless they're in a group of like-minded, like-thinking people, or online, like people, especially in comedy. And the thing with that, again, this conservative issue with DEI or transness or whatever, is I used to work at a comedy club. It was how I started doing this. Every time a conservative comedian came in, they told so many jokes that were so fucking hack, and they got all the same. Like the amount of times I've heard people on stage going, you can't offend people anymore, but I'm gonna do it anyway, to raucous fucking applause. And it's not that they actually said anything offensive. It's not that their jokes were actually good. It's the idea that they've been inundated with is that, oh, you're not supposed to say this stuff, so I'm brave and bold for saying it. In which you fucking see this every time a comedian goes on a podcast these days. Like it is getting more and more boring.
Like, yeah, Matt Rife level hacks are sort of the response to the anti-comedy left. And I mean, the right has never been funny outside of like $1 Million Extreme, because there's a lot of talented people on that show. But like, I struggle to come up with another example of a like right wingers being really funny. You know, like, well,
it's because it's, and we can get into a big conversation here. We were talking at the beginning.
I do want to clarify, that's not an endorsement of Sam Hyde in any way.
No, not at all.
Okay, like every comedian.
Other people.
$1 Million Extreme is funny, and tons of talented people worked on that show who don't like Sam, obviously.
Yeah, not surprising. But the problem with conservative culture, or the idea of what I think is probably going to be attempted soon, as Trump drums up, of course, trying to make Hollywood great or whatever the fuck. He touted at the address, which was fucking wild, how they have literally been strong-arming private sector companies to abandon DEI. And I think we are going to see more and more of that. I think we are going to see more and more. Hey, look, it'll be fun for all the brunch liberals to be like, see, look, he's just like Hitler. He's having propaganda and stuff. But the problems with any kind of conservative monoculture is that they don't have creativity. Like everything they make, we were talking about Daily Wire at the beginning, everything they make is reactionary. It is an answer to, it is an equivalent of, it is, here's conservative Bluey, here's conservative late night talk, here's conservative comic books, here, and it's at every fucking level. Here's a conservative video game. We're going to make video games great again. And it's like, that's not where all of these things came from. That's not where art came from.
It's also derivative, you know? And I think that's why right-wingers, they latch on to often people with our outlook of, like, it's good to be edgy, it's good to be subversive, these are good things. And they latch on to art that often comes from the left with those sorts of values, which is why you see, like, reactionary Cumtown fans or whatever the fuck. It's a weird thing. It's a movement nowadays without much creativity. They lost the sauce ever since the end of, like, the futurist movement. That's the last time that I ever had sauce.
As somebody, I am currently working and looking in the next couple of years to start production on films and movies, and
I can't wait to give you like a 2. And then
I can't. I'm so excited. But as I'm looking at a lot of media, as I'm looking at a lot of edgier stuff, because I think that there's a lot of artistic value in offense, not necessarily for the sake of offense, but for the sake of challenging values. And I think that's the difference between what conservatives want, which is offense to offend somebody, offense to look, we are going to, this is Lady Ballers is a perfect fucking example. Yeah. But then you have the other side of that coin, which again I think is this kind of leftist side, where you have something like John Waters, where it is comedic, it is challenging to a lot of, like, very obvious, it's very on the nose, like the satire he's made has never been particularly deep, but it is cutting and speaks to a wide portion of, like, the American experience, especially as it comes to things like evangelical religion and conservative politicians and sentiments of violence. Like, there are ways that you can handle these things that actually have artistic merit and value, and it's generally not just poking fun and going, look at how this is. Yeah,
like, I think that a lot of my bigger inspirations, like Eric Andre, Nick Mullen, Connor O'Malley, they've done jokes that would make the average left-wing Twitter user wince. However, it's my view that, like, when it comes to trying to be funny, the purpose of the joke is what's important. I think that the formula, in my view, is sort of like, why are you telling the joke? And is it more funny that is offensive? That often comes down to personal taste. But, like, I think that that's what's important. I think that a lot of the time when it comes to the left and their attacks on edginess, they're missing the forest for the trees.
Well, and I think that the other thing that's been very annoying, in addition to the re-rise of Trump, in addition to all the Project 2025 stuff, in addition to the feckless, absolutely useless Capitol Hill Democrats and their, big-ass parentheticals around resistance. Mm-hmm. The other more annoying aspect that I feel like I had blocked it out has been the resurgence of the, like, Trump-style Democrat. The motherfucker, like, look, if you ever call Elon Elmo because you think it's funny, because you think it's going to get to him or get under his skin.
Muskrat.
Elongated muskrat. Like, I called the teenagers he was hiring the muskrats, but that's because that actually works as a name, because they're young, they're kids, they're like Rugrats, but for Musk, and it's like, it has multiple. It's like a Kojima title. Okay, I'm working at multiple levels. But if you were just calling him a muskrat,
that joke. You can do better.
I do.
I believe in you.
It is my Sons of Liberty. But it is just the same kind of, like, worthless it reminds me, I can't stop thinking about, I watched it for the first time last year, Cabaret, which for those who don't know is a movie about Weimar Germany, and it's essentially a film about watching a bunch of
you fucking goy. Jesus Christ, you.
Exactly. Oi.
You fucking people, like a vault. Well,
I Gavolt.
You fucker. My culture is not your goddamn costume, you hack.
Oi. Watch where you're going there. Hey, y'all.
Yeah, the
right.
Jews be like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jewish motherfuckers.
No, but it's I forgot what I was saying. I had to summon my
Weimar Germany.
Yeah, Weimar Germany. It's essentially a movie about a bunch of very comfortable upper crust liberals going through just tedious bullshit drama as the country like very obviously descends into fascism around them. Like as people are being hauled out onto the streets, as acts of violence are ramping up, and they are just stuck focused on their tiny, insignificant little lives as all of this shit is crumbling around them.
First is tragedy, then is farce, baby. And it's happening again, and it's so much stupider.
It's so much stupider because
dumber. It's
so dumb. Everything is so fucking stupid.
The entirety of the 13th Beaumaire of Louis Bonaparte just flashes through my head every time I open up AP or Al Jazeera in the morning. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. It's history advancing. Like I think it's instinctual to want to hold on to the past and to wish a return to the past, but that's not happening.
No, and it never really has.
Preparing for a future, because contrary to Chud thought, everything is happening all the time, constantly, and
things constantly happen.
We're in one of those Lenin weeks, you know. We're seeing a emergence of the EU as an independent bloc, China becoming the global hegemon.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and we.
Let me say one of the weirdest aspects of coming into more leftist thought broadly over the last couple years, of continuing to become more vocally leftist, getting active in that stuff, has been China, because I've talked about it at length before on the channel, but I was raised very culturally conservative. Mm-hmm. And all through my, and maybe it was because, you know, I was a wee kipper when the Afghanistan war kicked off, when the invasion of Iraq kicked off. And so for most of my working young memory, the Middle East, and this was facilitated by jingoistic propaganda, stacked on top of, you know, video games, stacked on top of movies, on comic books, doesn't matter what it was. Everywhere you looked, it was people in turbans. We're the bad guys. So,
well, I mean, ever since Joe Biden took over, everywhere I look in my city, it's people with turbans.
It's just like what's happened. There's no-go zones, right?
Yeah, but I can't say that anymore.
Be censored. No, it is weird to see the China hate has most certainly been forced by, you know, American nationalist sentiment. It's not surprising.
Yeah, I mean,
but
China's just like a liberal democracy, essentially.
But it has been fucking wild to see how much more successful they've become, even in the last decade or so. And I think it was amazing to watch Trump come out and be like, oh, we're, you know, spending billions of dollars on crypto, and look at these private interests that we're just handing money hand over fist to. You know, fuck your tax dollars. But then the next day, China to put its big AI dick on the table and be like, check this shit out.
Dude, I'm so happy. I made so much fucking money on the stock market.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, because anyone in their right mind could see the Nvidia crash from a mile away.
Oh, yeah. I do not pay attention to the stock market.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know me. You know my background. You know that I've outcompeted the S&P 500.
As the chosen people often do.
It's true.
Okay, I'm gonna. All right, I'm stopping. I'm not gonna do that again.
Okay. Well, you're gonna do it more and more the more the show progresses. I'm your Adam Friedland. You know what I mean?
Oh, don't give me a.
I'm your little Jew punching bag.
No, because here's the problem: is that my my progressivism and my will to be nice to everyone is superseded by my ingrained need to do funny little voices.
It's
like
true.
it is.
Dude, okay, okay, hear me out. I wish that Chinese people weren't oppressed so we could do Chinese accents. Because they're very funny. They're very funny. But you can't say that anymore, you know? Can't say that anymore.
I mean, it also doesn't help that the people actually doing Chinese accents are so offensively unfunny, like Steven Crowder.
This is why I oppose racism. I wish that racism was gone so I could do my silly little voices. You know,
you wish that we were post-racism so we could make racist jokes.
Yes, I want to live in a post-racial society so I can do an Indian accent, okay?
Well, and going back to comedy really quick, I find that, like, generally, unless you are literally, you know, going up on stage and saying the N-word, I've always found that, like, people of color, if you tell a good joke that has to do with people of color, they fucking love it. I told a joke, one of my favorite kind of last jokes I worked on was literally about, like, corporate pride.
Yeah.
And talking about how, you know how everybody has a month now, and then whenever anybody has a month, every streaming service also has a month. Doesn't matter what shows they actually have for that group. You just go on HBO or something, and there's a category called Black Voices, and it's just 5 Tyler Perry movies and Friday.
Yeah.
And that joke, like, white people barely laughed at it. Every black person, every black friend I had fucking loved that joke.
Oh, I was
and
really
would, like,
okay,
tell me.
I have a suggestion. You could add on to that by saying Jewish voices. It's every movie that's ever been made.
Oh, that's fucking...
Every other movie.
If I was still doing stand-up...
See, like...
That's a fucking really good punch-up.
No, and it's like, I have the gift of gab. I'm able to, like, come up with shit like that on the spot. And, like, I played off of, like, racial stereotypes when coming up with shit off the spot. Has it always landed? No. That's being a comedian, whatever. But more often than not, it does. Like, I just, like, referring to Chinese NASCAR is the single largest mass death in human history. Just offhandedly improvised. That's funny. That's fucking funny.
That's pretty good.
Like, I don't know. Dude, we're gonna ruffle so many feathers with this shit. I'm rubbing my hands together. I'm so excited.
Well, you're always doing that though. That's just something.
I'm a feathers ruffler.
Hey, lady, shush.
Yeah, I got that dog in me. Not in a puppy girl type way, but in a DMX type way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Dude.
What?
I forget who told the joke, but who told the fucking joke? I don't want to steal someone's joke without crying in it. Never mind. It's a good joke. I'll steal it. Someone said, a wise man whose name I forgot once said that when you buy a new car, you see more of that type of car everywhere. When you start listening to DMX, you see more dogs everywhere.
That's really good.
He's an antithesis to the thesis of puppy girls.
I love that. That's funny.
Why don't we shift gears real quick? Let's get into Ukraine talk. Let's ruffle even more feathers. The Butcher Trump is back at it again. Long live the Butcher, who works in spite of himself to create the conditions for global proletarian revolution. What are your thoughts on Trump's shift in policy, moving away from Ukraine and the EU towards Russia in the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
It's entirely incredibly unsurprising. I unlike a lot of other people on the left, and I realize this is probably not a popular position to have, I have not been as invested over the last several years. I have not been as invested or particularly interested in the Russia-Ukraine conflict to look into things like the, Azov battalion and allegations of which side actually has the real Nazis, and
They both do.
They both do. Like it's
Europe, of course.
I was literally about to say it's fucking Eastern Europe. They both
Dude,
do.
Okay. Why the fuck is it that like it's goddamn Mexicans, Brazilians, black people, and Slavs who are all the Nazis? Where are our blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan Chads that we were promised? What the fuck is going on?
Look at my Nazis, dog.
Look at my Nazis, dog. It's so cooked, dude.
Ain't never getting a Fourth Reich.
It's so cooked, dude.
It's so.
I might as well throw my hat in the fucking ring at this point, since the standards are so goddamn low.
If fucking Nick Fuentes and Ryan Sanchez can pass, like
Aryan, I'm Aryan.
Oh god, I still laugh when I think about
fucking schnoz.
That fucking clip he has where he's like, I just want a white Aryan revenge for my people, and I'm just like, man. Nick has a clip. Yeah, it's very anyway. So when it comes to Ukraine, I have my broad opinion, insofar as I've had one, has been opposing Russia. Like, they are the instigator of the conflict by literally all accounts. Putin is a fucking awful piece of shit human being. He is an open authoritarian and completely reneged on agreements that kicked off the war. It does not even come down to necessarily a like right or left thing. It is just the basic rules of engagement and rules of war have been broken. Fuck that person.
I would agree that Putin's a bad dude, but like my position has always been like a opposition to the war in general. Because like my view is
exactly.
If let's say Ukraine wins tomorrow, how do the Ukrainian people benefit? It's just a return to the status quo. If Russia wins, what changes for the Ukrainians? They're still getting exploited in a for lack of a better term, post-Soviet shithole, just which Russia is, which Ukraine is, due to the fact that both countries are being, not even being sucked dry by their domestic capitalist class. They've been sucked dry by their domestic capitalist class ever since the implementation of the shock doctrine, and it's a needless war. And frankly, my assertion here is that this sort of weird implosion of American soft power is probably a good thing, and the end to the war is probably a good thing, because it's not like Zelensky is this hero of the working class.
No, not.
And that's not a defense of
and I would agree
either. That's just to say that ideally,
that's just reality.
This is just the basic position of any sort of class conscious person on World War One. I'll fucking link in the description. I don't know. What's the name of it? World War II imperialist, anti-proletarian, counter-revolutionary. I'll link that text so you can like have my position laid out more broadly, but it's a horrible war, and Trump doesn't care.
Oh no. Like here's the thing is that, and I think we're going to get into a lot of this moving forward, is that Ukraine and the Ukraine war is a war, like you were saying, it's not based on material need, it's based on Putin's ego. It is based on ego and pride, and I think that Trump is going to get us into more. It doesn't surprise me that Trump sides with Putin as much as he does, because he is looking to get America into that shit as well. In Panama, in Greenland, in probably fucking Canada.
Yeah, and I don't know. So many anarchists in particular have the most childish position I've ever seen on the Ukraine war, where they you even see anarcho, quote unquote, anarcho-communists who the Ukrainian anarchists would have had shot, fighting alongside Azov battalion in the name of anti-fascism. It's like siding with Mussolini against Hitler because Mussolini is the relative lesser evil.
Yeah, I'm not fucking surprised that two countries in Eastern Europe, like when they have to have conscripted military, happen to have Nazis in like it doesn't.
No, it's not even
It
a
doesn't
matter of
surprise me.
conscription. It's the fact that they're neo-Nazi militias that were officially incorporated into the military in the name of national defense, which again, the working class has nothing to lose but their chains. The idea of the nation is a golden calf that needs to be done away with. Read Rosa Luxemburg's positions on Ukrainian nationalism in this regard. It's been the basic position of the communist left since Marx, which you see people abandoning because it's sort of positioning themselves against Trump is often the main motivation. And it's not like the Republicans are principally anti-war. It's just sort of weird happenstance stumbling into a potential end to the conflict, which I think should be supported. I think that if there is a end to the war in Ukraine, that would be a positive thing, even if it means seceding land to Russia. I don't care. It doesn't. All that it changes is the people of Ukraine remain oppressed under a oligarch. If we want to call it an oligarchy, we can call it an oligarchy. I just call it capitalism. They remain suppressed under an oligarchy, and except they're not dying in a war anymore, which I'd say is beneficial.
See, and I here's where my lib streak is going to come back, is that I do care if the land is ceded to Russia, even though, unfortunately, I think that that's going to be the fucking eventuality. I think that if there is a peace agreement, if there is a peace agreement, Putin isn't going to give a fuck. Like, he's going to take whatever.
Yeah, but I don't know. We're getting really controversial this episode. The thing is that, like, Crimea has been occupied by Russia since 2014, essentially. It's a land dispute. That nobody should be dying over. I don't think that people should be dying over land.
But all right, so here's my problem is that, like, and I agree with you. I completely agree. The problem for me is that, okay, if Putin gets Ukraine, if Putin continues getting Ukraine.
Are we saying all of Ukraine or the east of, like, the Crimea and the other territories?
Well, let's say he gets just the, that stuff that he says he wants, right? He gets granted the land that he says, oh, this is the territorial dispute and blah, blah, blah. What is going to stop him now that America has pulled out aid for Ukraine, apparently, now that America is backing out of NATO, now, like, what is going to stop Russia from just continuing to take the rest of Ukraine and subsuming it?
Nothing.
Exactly. And that is my
it's my position that the working class is international. We don't have anything in common with our national bourgeoisie. We have nothing more in common with the American national bourgeoisie than we do the Canadian bourgeoisie. If Canada were to invade today, I would not take up arms against Canada. I would take up arms against the bourgeois state itself. I think that it's an analysis that relies on accepting the legitimacy of nationalism. It's an analysis that relies on the legitimacy that there's any difference in the class interest between a Russian and a Ukrainian worker when their interests are united against the capitalist classes who engage in imperialist war and require constant expansion of their markets into new markets. I kind of talked myself into repeating myself there. I digress. It relies on the idea that the working class knows a nation rather than knows no nation, is, I guess, what I'm getting at here.
And I agree with you in a bigger context, and looking at a wide scale. But I think on a personal, on a smaller scale, on a smaller level, I don't think people in Ukraine are gonna be necessarily thinking that when Russian tanks are rolling through their towns after this many years.
Oh no, I agree. And
I think it's a lot harder to sell that to people who are going to see this as Putin expanding.
Oh, yeah. I agree,
Yeah.
which is why like Lenin's stance on World War One was unpopular, because his stance was revolutionary defeatism and seceding land to Germany, which he did secede land to Germany to stop the war. And my position is similar in the sense that peace should be the goal. And I think that it's easy to say as an outside observer, oh, of course the people want to remain under the control of Ukraine. However, you do see within the Ukrainian army people deserting. You see conscription being often quite unpopular, and people in Ukraine wanting the war to stop. You know, I think that's it's a horrible, senseless war, which there's no good outcome of other than dismantling the factors and systems of power that led to the war in the first place.
And yeah,
which are nationalism and capitalist imperialism.
And I completely agree. And I think, unfortunately, that at least as far as Russia goes, and as far as Russia, I don't even know what to fucking call it, like allied with America now. Like it seems like, again, I don't want to get too lib-minded, because I'm so fucking tired of the Trump is Putin's puppet and fucking bought and paid for by the Kremlin.
Is.
Except like it is really fucking, I feel like even for conservatives, it's getting hard to like not fucking see that shit. Like you can't look the other way anymore.
He's Russia's puppet in the same way that Joe Biden is the G7's puppet and our domestic bourgeoisie's puppet. Well, not domestic bourgeoisie, like the G7, the quote-unquote West's bourgeoisie's puppet. He's a puppet of the sort of neo-reactionary dude, I can't believe I'm saying this, in the Landian sense. Oh my god, Nick Land mentioned.
Big shout out to all the Nick Land fans.
Shout out all the Nick Land fans listening to this. He's a puppet of this new position emerging among the domestic and foreign bourgeoisies, that the current G7 systems of power aren't working, which they aren't. We're seeing lower and lower GDP growth year over year, lowering to 3%, which is ass poor. And we're going to see a shift in the way that America's positioning itself against the threat of China in order to play the most advantageous position. It's the view of the ruling class, which is behind Trump, that can be found by looking to the east.
East in this case being Russia.
Russia, yes.
Or Eastern Europe, yeah.
The East, the nebulous term, the other, what the G7 rejects, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of, gosh, I just lost it. God damn it.
Were you going to talk about the gay guns thing?
No. Oh, fuck. We completely, God. Yeah, I think it is a good idea. That actually would be a good capstone to kind of wrap back around to what we started on, as far as talking about the difference between community protection, personal protection, and incitement to violence. Because it is a tool of the powerful to label all of these things as the same. It is a tool of, like you were talking about, the FBI, the CIA, every kind of COINTELPRO, every kind of government black project to dismantle from the inside or explicitly any community outreach, any people of color, militant group in the last 50 years.
You want to hear something really spicy? I think that the fact that COINTELPRO and that sort of acknowledging these sort of system, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, acknowledging that, I think that associating that with the far right and the right wing is a protracted operation of like whatever the modern day of equivalent of COINTELPRO is, because it's a
It's a liberal project.
Yes. Yeah, like COINTELPRO is a liberal project, which is why I think it's childish to sort of flatly reject that these shadowy figures exist, which is a childish thing I see on much of the left. But yeah, the latest three-letter agency thing is saying that queer people shouldn't own guns because.
Well, okay. Well, let me back up really quick because I want to preface this. I think that people debating these things, and while it certainly does help the goals of whatever three-letter agency wants to not have people do this stuff, I think that sometimes people are just dumb, and I don't think that necessarily.
They're interns.
Yeah, I don't think that makes everybody
realizing it.
I don't think that makes everybody working against their interests a glowy, and I think that, like, even saying that feels like gross Channer bullshit. And I think
when I say three-letter agency, I don't.
No, and I get you. I completely fucking understand.
I'm not saying that for you. I'm saying that for the comments. But the comments, I feel like anyone that would get mad is probably clicking off anyway. So
yeah, that's fine. But it is this. Talk about. Let me see if I can find that article. What was the outlet it was from?
Some lib shit. Not the Jacobin. Some bullshit like the Jacobin. BTQ. Dude, the Jacobin is so funny. I have a Jacobin magazine subscription, and every month, I get that shit. It's like why we shouldn't secede nationalism to the right. Very funny, God. Deeply funny.
And people wonder why they lost.
The PSL and DSA are really just the quote unquote left wing version of the ACP. The ACP are the orthodox Stalinists, if anything. They're sort of a neo-Stalinist liberals in those organizations. Yes, I am a genius.
Okay,
yes,
here's what it was. From Defector, don't buy a gun even if it comes in rainbow.
Dude, I'm defecting by not doing anything.
By advocating against literally anything. It's so broadly it's a
if you're suicidal, don't buy a gun or have
if you
kept in a safe.
And I've said this to people before, like if you think there's a possibility that you might use it to hurt yourself, if you have any kind of history of mental illness, don't buy a gun. Absolutely do not. There is a reason why gun suicides are so fucking high in so many red flyover states.
Suicides.
The majority of them are suicides, and especially in flyover states and a lot of Republican states where there isn't a lot of funding for mental health care, and somebody is out in the middle of bumfuck Montana all alone for 3 months out of the year.
Which is why it's true that the U.S. does have a mental health problem rather than a gun problem.
100%.
Because even when fully automatic firearms were legal, you didn't have these massive mass shootings in the way that you do today, just because at the risk of sounding pretentious, history hadn't advanced, the forces of power hadn't advanced to the point of the sort of post-Reagan USA, where it's just been a constant downward spiral of diminishing returns and furthering of the exploitation of the working class until we get to where we are today, at which point people feel like they were lied to about what they were promised as a kid, and then they turn to reactionary ideologies, they turn to nihilism, they turn to suicide, etc. And then you see these horrible individualist acts of violence as a result
it's not a
material.
Yeah, it's not an accident that so many of them are accompanied by manifestos and long, unhinged, rambling pieces they leave behind on 4chan boards or Kiwi Farms or wherever the fuck, saying this, I was, radicalized by this to kill these people, and this, and why it's always also, and again, people are going to be like, well, you just talked out about glowies and the feds and stuff. I'm sure that there have been a couple manifestos that weren't written by shooters, but like a good example is the one from the black school shooter, the black Nazi recently, where if you go and read that, it's pure deep fried brain rot from the heart of the internet. Like it's something
old as fuck.
Yeah, it's something no fucking Fed could come up with because it is so it is born on the boards.
Yeah, like I do think it's interesting that you don't see serial killings anymore. Now you see mass shootings. Given the relation to serial killers with COINTELPRO, I digress.
That is a fascinating. I could honestly talk for hours about that because I went through a whole.
But the total FBI shit, that was a fucking FBI operation. There were like that. It's not how work. That's not how fucking works. I don't know what it achieves, but dude, I guarantee you, in like 30 years, that's just gonna be like a commonly known fact.
No, it's gonna be one. It's gonna be a fucking like partially redacted file that just gets, oh yeah, here's a FOIA request and boop ba-doop, and people are like, oh huh, FBI did that. Like that's the way it always fucking goes.
It's like I think that 4chan's probably like some sort of fucking FBI front. I think that it's, I don't know what it achieves because obviously we don't have all of the information, but I do think.
I mean, I think like
probably like creation of a police state, just like manufacturing consent for a police state or whatever the fuck. Like we saw with serial killers. I think it's just
I mean, like if you were to let's play conspiracy, let's play Alex Jones for a moment. If you were to say, okay, this 4chan, 8chan, these are ops. Sure, why not? Well, cut the thing about but let's keep this in.
Wait, I'm gonna keep that in.
No, don't. That's too heavy.
I'll beat that. But no, like
if we were to say, let's say, hypothetically, for the sake of argument,
let's say
that
hypothetically, for the sake of
argument,
now
that 4chan, Kiwi Farms, 8chan, whatever, that they are ops, it would make sense, mostly given the fucking history of the intelligence community in the United States experimenting on the populace with no real aim or goal. And you have to think back to the people want to talk about MK Ultra as if it was actual mind control experiments. It fucking wasn't. It was like it's actually more interesting history to look into what actually happened with MK Ultra, because it was just a bunch of people strung out on drugs, giving drugs to other people.
It's people like me. It's just, wouldn't it be funny and then committing
exactly
this bullshit? You know what I mean? Like.
So like if somebody wants to say like these boards are a federal op, but we don't know the purpose, I'm like, if that is true, I don't know. If it is, I don't necessarily even want to entertain the notion or give support to it. But if it is, I don't think there is a fucking goal to it. I don't think there is a end point. I think it is let us see what power we can assert.
Consent for I'm not gonna get into, but the Patriot Act, things like preventing the average working person from having a firearm, because nothing's more dangerous than armed working class. I mean, that's why
speaking of that, I do want to get back to. I'm staring at a fucking paragraph right here that I'm gonna be. I'll read in a second, but continue what you're saying.
Yeah, but that's why my position is and always has been that I am a Second Amendment absolutist, and I think that obviously I don't believe in a constitution, but I think that under in ideal society, communities would have access for free to weapons training and whatever weapons they want. You know what I mean? That
this is something I got to talking kind of about on a stream recently. I don't know if you were there, but I was talking about, because people were talking about police and abolishing the police, and the idea, like, in a perfect utopian society, you think everybody has their material needs met, everybody has the healthcare they need.
Post scarcity communism.
But like if you had that all the boxes checked, everybody's happy, you would still need some kind of detectives. You would still need some kind of enforcement.
Defense,
Yeah, it can be
'Cause, I mean, like,
community-led
yeah,
and
even
community-based.
Even under communism, there could be like sickos out there that like kids or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, that's not going to stop.
Because so much of it is like the fetishization of youth all across
And this is
society.
I don't want to get into like a whole big
Yeah.
picture, but there are these things that I think I think it's a lot of very youthful idealists want to push for these more radical changes without thinking of like what has to take its place.
No, it's like the thing is in order, like, let's say that there's a dictatorship of the proletariat established, there needs to be ruthlessness in protecting it, so we don't see like bourgeois counter-revolution like we did with the social democrat Stalin and the social democrat Trotsky in 1926. Like, there needs to be, in a proletarian semi-state, there needs to be some sort of police. You can call it something different, but if we're being honest here, it's the police. Because
to move away
continue.
briefly for another historical anecdote, it's the need to defend what you fight for after any kind of massive social movement reminds me of Andrew Johnson, who was the president right after Lincoln, who immediately kowtowed to a shit ton of southern states, southern laws around like what former slaves could or couldn't do, could or couldn't own, to try and allow a little bit more of the southern dignity to be retained after everybody else had just spent, years and years wiping shit all over the southern states and trying to grind them into the fucking dirt. And it allowed for that to continue for another fucking 100 years because nobody said, no, fuck you.
There's a childish idea of Lincoln not being a tyrant. Lincoln was a tyrant, and it was good. The tyrant Lincoln was good. He should have been more tyrannical. He should have been ruthless in his purges.
Well, and it by necessity,
that literally would have made the world a better place. If Lenin had fucking purged Stalin, Trotsky, Bukharin, and all of the falsifiers, the world would be a better place. There's any sort of violence is authoritarian in its nature. Power is authority. Any sort of
So I want to talk really quick, going back to gun rights, leftist organization. This very short op-ed on a place called Defector. And there's really just one paragraph. It is mostly whinging about gun ownership, talking about how it's bad. But I want to read this one
which is
paragraph,
such cracker bullshit, by the way.
It really fucking is.
Whatever, dude.
It is. And look, let me tell you what, I have never felt as secure and safe at a protest as when armed leftists were there. And there were also, because there were armed right-wingers or Proud Boys or people with fucking AR-15s that came there specifically to intimidate, to threaten.
Yeah, and like the Black Panther Party,
famously,
famously they did that. I know that a lot of my fellow left communists make this childish rejection of the Black Panther Party due to the fact that they weren't pure Marxists. However, I do think that their defense of working class communities from forces of reaction showed the most advanced building of dual power within the United States and represented the most advanced working class movement in this country. Which I think,
while we're fucking on conspiracies, like there are reasons that the government killed like Fred Hampton. Verifiable, easy reasons. Yeah. And a lot of them had to do with him being like, hey, Nazis, you don't hate us, you hate the people who are making you fucking poor.
No, which is because he worked along working class lines rather than racial lines, which is why there's this childish assertion among a lot of the black left that because Huey P. Newton was killed, because Fred Hampton was killed, that their strategies were proved ineffective. No, there's a reason that the NOI remains to this day. It's because it is not a threat to capital. It represents a petite bourgeois nationalism among the black working class, a false consciousness, whereas the Black Panther Party, ideologically perfect or not, represented a true threat to capitalism through working class unity, and that should
there's
be
actually
replicated.
a really good analog to this that we are kind of seeing unfold right now with Luigi Mangione, where the second, like, Luigi Mangione was, everybody remembers that week or so afterwards, and when he got caught, the fucking media went into overdrive trying to prostrate him as this, sick, twisted killer, but it didn't fucking work, because the actual interests of most people in America were against people like the fucking health insurance exec. But now, the thing I think that people are starting to do is to, instead of, okay, that tactic didn't work, now we're pushing him as a sex symbol. Now we are defanging his image in another way.
Yeah. Like, and I think that, like I said earlier, terrorism is often ineffective, but the whole Luigi thing, I think, sort of it's still happening, so my analysis isn't complete yet.
Well, and I think it's the other side of that reactionary action coin we were just talking about, where you have created this volatile societal brew for so many different people, where everybody's going through different shit and everybody has different outlets or lack of outlets, that at one point, like, somebody is going to, instead of punching down, they're going to start punching up. And I think that's the scarier part. It is the people who were afraid for their lives, the CEOs, the health insurance execs, the politicians, they have looked at dozens, hundreds of mass shootings. Like the same politicians who looked at kids being slaughtered at Sandy Hook, who looked at Las Vegas, who looked at all of these things and said, "Oh, thoughts and prayers, this is very unfortunate." Who saw all these things in such a passive way and greeted them with hopes and prayers. But the second that violence, that uncoordinated rage that they have spurred on through their inaction, through their extortion and proliferation of their interests, the second that even looked in their direction, they fucking clutched their pearls. And I think that's, again, that's important to remember in the context even of firearms ownership.
Yeah, my only fear with the Luigi shit is this individualism arising from it, where people are just gonna start tacitly waiting around for the next act of terrorism to happen, which, let me be clear here, even if they it represented class struggle, it wasn't effective in challenging capitalism in the sense that he's just a cog in the machine. There needs to be a protracted movement against the machine itself, rather than taking out one little piece of it, which can quickly be replaced.
By design. Like, companies are literally engineered so that if one person gets fired, if one person goes missing, guess what? There's 1,000 people in line.
Yeah.
It's all or nothing with dismantling a system.
The firm is a dangerous organism that's quickly able to heal and evolve.
So speaking of, sorry, I want to go back. I still haven't read the gun paragraph, I'll just start reading it now. Let's be extraordinarily generous and say a gun, a permit, and enough practice time to get comfortable shooting runs you $500. Already, that's already way under valuing if you want to get a gun, a good gun, and enough time to get comfortable shooting. Unless you know somebody who has like a range or lives out in the woods.
Yeah.
That money goes to people who have. Hang on. You're gonna love this. That money goes to people who have a vested interest in upholding the climate of fear that got you to buy the gun in the first place. What are some other uses for that money? Shelter, dinner, a makeover, mutual aid, internet service, art supplies, clothing, medication, musical instruments, electrolysis, movie tickets, pet toys, diapers, candles, books, videos, games, shampoo, furniture, sports equipment, tattoos. The list is endless.
Okay,
when you are already in a precarious spot, spend your precious money on something that will make your life happier and safer than a gun will.
Okay,
I'm going to copy and paste that.
Copy and paste that list, DM it to me. Let's go through point by painful.
I put it in the chat.
Shelter. BlackRock represents the most advanced cartel in the United States. Dinner, dude. Okay. I'm not gonna go through
These,
every
first
single
off, these are a
person.
great. This
They're
is a
all
great look
bourgeois.
into the liberal mindset because it is blending these things that everybody fucking needs with shit that everybody can live without. Like,
Yeah, it's
can, in a modern context, you need shelter and dinner. Nobody needs a fucking makeover. You probably
luxury
need
commodity.
internet service.
It's
Yeah, you probably
literally
need internet
avocado
service,
toast shit.
medication, diapers. Like, you can live without fucking video games. You need shampoo. You can live without sports equipment. Like, it is such a... This is the kind of brain that is pushing these arguments that say, oh, you shouldn't want to like really stand up for yourself, and we need to still focus on electoralism.
Because clearly this person has a vested interest in the status quo and has more to lose than their chains. They're not with us. They're not like us. As do you see that Alex Jones clip where he's like, "They're not like us, the globalists.
Oh
they're
my God.
not."
I love...
They not like us. They not like us. They not like us. They're pedophiles. They rape kids. They're evil. They want to hurt you. They not like us. They not like us. They not like us. That's what I've been saying. They not like us. We know you're evil, globalists. Telling the public, they not like us. 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 Klaus Schwab not like us. King Charles not like us. Barack Obama, they are not like us. And there's double meaning to that. They not like us. They don't like us, and they're not like us. They not like us. They not like us. They're not with us. They not like us.
I so love when he tries to be cool. It's my favorite fucking thing in the world.
Dude, I love you, Alex. Please come on the show. We're a lot like you.
God, I would
give
just
any-
love to pick his brain about so many things.
He's such a funny fucking dude.
He's so... Yeah.
Yeah.
What a human.
Yeah, but like like jumping off of this whole ethical consumption thing represents this liberal part of leftism that we need to reject, and the co-option of leftism by liberals, which is why I think that we need to reject the idea of big tent leftism, like you saw with the stupid ass 1 day boycott.
Oh, the boycott, yeah.
Where small businesses are okay, even though small business owners represent the most reactionary forces in our country. And
straight up.
Small businesses are
the worst jobs I ever had were straight up from small business tyrants.
Yeah,
like not even fucking close.
Last job I had, small Italian restaurant, store owners said probably enjoy being raped and then cut my hours.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah,
It's like people you can
shit.
talk shit about big companies, but you know what? Most of those big companies either fear unionization enough to give you something, or they have unions.
No, okay, here's the actual... You want to see with the actual truth nuke? The bigger that big companies get, the larger the working class grows, the more exploited the working class grows, the larger the revolutionary...
The more power they have.
Yeah, the larger the revolutionary consciousness becomes, the less that they have to lose, the more likely they are to rise up.
Yeah. And
Which
that
is why
doesn't
you
fucking
should
happen
only
at small
steal
business tyrants.
from small businesses. Buy shit from Walmart. Do not buy stuff from small businesses. Steal from small businesses.
I disagree with that message. I do not endorse that one.
That was a joke.
But really quick, the gun thing. It is not. I also think it's slightly lib. It's in a weird way. I think it's slightly lib. Well, this is very lib-minded, but I think there has been this, like, in the same way that you always see people talking about, like, oh, if Trump gets elected, I'm going to leave the country. It's like, it's this thing that a lot of people talk about, not a lot of people do. And I do think that responsible gun ownership is a good thing.
Yeah.
I do think that you need to also have a proper grasp on what owning a firearm means and the actual damage it can do, because I think a lot of people go like, yeah, I'm just going to have a gun so I can just have a gun. It's like, no, you need to you need to treat it with fucking respect. And if I had my scruples, we would run guns in America like they do in Japan. Because I think it's probably one of the best gun ownership systems out there.
It's a dangerous tool and should be treated with respect. You know what I mean?
But we also live in I've had conversations with this before. Like, we live in a world where other people have guns and want to use them against you. So you are doing yourself and the people that you want to protect no favors by being hands off and saying, you know what, I just won't engage with this.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, let's say that Proud Boys like try to incite a pogrom against queer people, in a blue state. I don't think that that's an unlikely thing to happen. It becomes more difficult when there is a gun pointing out of a window. It becomes more difficult when they're not sure what city blocks have a gun pointing out of the window. It's a fire extinguisher.
It is the act of deterrence is in and of itself sometimes enough to stop conflict. Yes. The idea that, and that's why I was saying, like, I've never felt safer than at a protest where there were people in black bloc, there were people in tack vests who were leftists, who had trans patches, who were exhibiting proper firearm safety and etiquette, while you had dipshit chuds with their fucking Nazi skull masks who were not.
By the way, I do want to say, this shit needs to be planned. Don't be a fucking left-wing Rittenhouse showing up with your shitty $30 eBay gun to protest.
Yeah. No, if you hear this and you're like, you know what, actually that I want to be that person at a protest, you need to be in contact with the organization behind the protest. You need to be in contact with, if it's a big enough protest, there will be people there who are medical staff who have the first aid kits. Like, you need to be in contact and coordinated, and don't treat this shit lightly. If you are there to help and protect people, that should be your first and only priority.
The biggest red flag is if it's a podcaster that's convincing you, oh, I should start bringing my gun to protests, don't do it. I don't.
Well, it's like so at the protest yesterday, there was one guy who was kind of standing off alone, kind of looked a little shifty, and the only thing, and he agreed emphatically, you know, when there would be chants like deport Trump, deport Musk, or whatever. And every now and then he would try and get a chant going, but it was always from 0 to 10. It wasn't like impeach Trump. It was kill fascists and scalp Nazis. And it's not that I necessarily disagree with
It's a child's ideology. It's the politics of
aesthetic. Exactly.
So many. Okay, how I say this without coming off like incredibly chudded. A lot of anti-fascists, particularly anarchistic ones, their engagement with politics is nearly identical to that of your average Nazi, where it's a engagement through movie clips and power fantasies.
I would even go as far as to say that extends to a lot of libs.
And you know what? Okay, I'm gonna say this is even a critique of you. Like on the Trump speed stream that we had together. Like you're
I did. I was slightly. I had a little bit to drink. I have no regrets about it.
Except I will say I do think that represents a very childish tendency on the part of much of the left.
No, you're right.
I think that you should read.
Well, all right. So here's the thing, is that I would argue on that. I would say in favor of catharsis. Like, I think there is something to be said for art being cathartic, and I think that is why so many people gravitate to those images and those stories. But it's also, there needs to be a disconnect between seeing it as a fantasy, as a power fantasy, and disconnecting that from tangible reality and the action we can take. Because it's the same shit with the amount of times I've seen fucking Captain America art of him punching Trump or punching Hitler.
And the stupid fucking GI robot shit. where it's like that's not you. You sit your fat ass on X the Everything app or Blue Sky every day. What the fuck are you on about? You know what I mean?
Like it is this catharsis that I think people mistake for, and maybe it's a side effect of what we were talking about with this industry of offense that conservatives have cultivated, where so many libs and so many, anarchists see offending them, see torching their aesthetics in front of them, see images of violence against people that ideologically agree with them as tangible and worthwhile resistance, even though it's not.
Yeah, it's a golden calf. Like,
So yeah, I do take that criticism on the head, even though I think there's a time and place for it, and I think the problem is that so many people don't realize when the time and place is.
Yeah, I just think it comes across quite pathetic in general.
Well, thanks.
Not okay. I wasn't calling you pathetic.
No, I get it. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I look back at that and I cringe a little bit.
It was pathetic. Either way.
Now the truth comes out.
The truth comes out. I was holding my tongue when you started doing that shit. I was like, okay.
I could tell. I was. So it wasn't just you. At the time, I was also being brigaded by some fucking dorks.
Yes. Yeah. I know. You get baited.
Yeah.
You get baited very. I want to say very.
I get baited. Well, I don't get baited very easily. I get baited a lot, and I have definitely grown more accustomed to just like shirking it off. But on that night, I was not fucking having it.
Yeah, I get it.
I think extenuating circumstances apply.
Well, quite obviously. I do think like coming back to there's a good book called Fascism, Aesthetics, and Culture. It makes the claim that fascism is a politics of aesthetics. It's a politics of relating to reality with grandiose perceptions. You know what I mean? Rather than on material bases. I think that a lot of this quite childish radicalism is fascistic in the sense that it is politics mediated entirely through aesthetics rather than any sort of principled material engagement with the world around you.
Well, and I think that comes back to like what you were just saying about how similar so many of the more reactionary elements of the right and left are. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning with like the conspiratorial left and the Blue Anon contingent and like, the fucking people we've been talking about this whole time, the people who are like, oh, Trump is bought and paid for by the Kremlin and like all this stuff. It's easy, reductive answers for these problems that even if tomorrow we woke up, Trump was no longer in power, the Dems finally did it, they impeached him and put him in prison. The problems that led to
worse.
Yeah, well, JD Vance is worse, but like the problems that led to Trump's wrangling of a again faux populist sentiment, but the problems, the material conditions that led to Trump would just keep repeating.
I want to read a quote. I think that
Do we want to read the quote to finish off?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't fear the man who's gooned to 1,000 different women. I fear the man that's gooned to the same woman 1,000 times.
And that's good advice for everybody, I feel.
And that's the goddamn truth of the matter.
Ain't it the truth?
Well, I've been Rosa.
And I have been Jordan.
And this was Brett Kavanaugh News. I forgot the name. I couldn't come up with a conservative talk radio host. I fucked up there. That's my bad.
You better leave this all in.
Yeah, no. They can't all be wearers, folks. I mean, I give you 2 hours of peak.
Gold.